talking to you live on Thestatvantage. Folks, we are off and running, and we are going to be inviting some comments today. Let me check something on my wire here and take care of a few things here, light of business. Get this done. Off the screen for just a second. We're going to stream live now, folks. And we are just about ready to stream live. And folks, we are online and we are with you at Thestatvantage.com right here in Las Vegas. Folks, my name is David Clairbaud. They call me Dr. David. And I have been a coach for a number of years in college and high school. In college, I was an athletic director in a national championship program. But I coached in high school basketball even after that, because I really wanted to keep my hand into coaching after I got out of the college world. But anyway, today we're going to talk live and we're going to take your questions. So if you have any questions, all you have to do, my friends, is simply get in and start letting me know. I'll be checking my notes here. You see my head turning to the side. I'll be always looking for chat notes. Okay, first of all, I want to give you a fun question. Here's a fun question. All things being equal, is it better to play up-tempo or half-court basketball? Which is better? Which gives you more wins? Thestatvantage scientifically tests with thousands and thousands of games what brings wins and what does not bring wins. Okay, but we'll get to that in a minute. Question again. All things being equal, up-tempo, half-court, which is better? The answer? It makes no difference. There is no relationship at all between whether you play up-tempo or whether you play half-court in terms of whether you win or not. It's all a matter of matching what your skills are that you have in your ball club to the style of play you have. We find no relationship with thousands and thousands of games between up-tempo or slow-down basketball. Makes no difference. Fun question. So if you got that one wrong, well, then I'll tell you something, folks. You're going to learn a lot here today, okay? Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about today is this. I want to talk about the three-point shot, what I call death at the three-point line, okay? Now, a lot of people wonder, does a three-point shot really work in basketball? Well, sometimes it does. Obviously, if you got some lights-out shooters, guys can drill that baby at almost a 50% clip, yeah, you better keep gunning for three-point land. And there are teams out there that can do that, but not a lot of them. Not a lot of them at all, okay? Let me give you a couple of numbers for you to think about. In StatVantage, we use what's called an adjusted field goal percentage. Now, an adjusted field goal percentage simply gives an extra half basket to a three-point shot. So let's say a team makes 4 out of 10 shots, but 2 of those are three-point shots. So we're adding 2 half baskets to those 4. It's the same as making 5 baskets out of 10. So whereas the field goal percentage is 40%, our adjusted field goal percentage is 50%. See where I'm going? Now, here's the kick. When we look at high school basketball, the average high school basketball team shoots 44.9% on 2-point shots. Get that, gang. 44.9 on 2-point shots. Checking for questions, and I'll get to them in a second, okay? Now, on those 2-point shots, at 44.9, we're not putting any 3-point shots in there, okay? Here's the interesting thing. The average high school basketball team, boys high school basketball, shoots 29.5% from 3-point line. 29.5 against 44.9. Now, to make those 3-point shots worth something, you're going to add a half a basket, right? So in other words, we're simply going to add half to 29.5, which is roughly 15%, okay? When we add the 15%, we're still a hair short of what they shoot from the 2-point line, which is 44.9. We're just barely at 44. It's close, but the point is that generally speaking, the 3-point shot works against a team, not for the team. In other words, what we're finding is it's death at the 3-point line for most teams. There are teams that are shooting way too many threes, and all they're doing is giving away possessions. Because what they're doing is, I get my sip of water here, firing the ball in the air and allowing a rebound to fall into the hands of the defense. So keep in mind, folks, keep in mind at all times that you have to be careful with the three-point shot. The three-point shot is not a panacea. Unless it's going in pretty frequently, it's probably costing points for your team. Now, if you're a fan out there and you want to check how good the coaching is, and they publish the three-point number, you put that adjusted together. Just add the extra half basket for the three-point shots and see if the adjusted field goal percentage is higher than a two-point percentage. See, another only way for this to work, the only way you can show me that the three-point shot's working for a team is if its adjusted field goal percentage, adding that half basket, is higher than just their two-point percentage alone. And if it isn't, and most teams do not have that in their arsenal, I can tell you the three-point shot is not in general helping them. Now, there are times when you're in the last minute of the game, you're down 3, you got to take the 3. I get that. I coached, I know how that works, okay? I had a kid one time that could shoot the three-point shot almost with his eyes closed. So we shot it. We shot it a lot, okay? And it worked with him. But if that ball went to somebody else, the percentage just dropped. So it's very important to keep that three-point shot perspective all the time, okay? Now, a couple of other things here, so we move on. And one of the questions I get is, how did I ever get into this? Or what background do I have? What makes me an authority, the usual kind of thing. Okay, well, let me give you a little background on who I am and how we did this and why this is so effective, Thestatvantage.com. And again, get your questions in here because we'll be here for a little bit and we'll take any questions we get, okay? Because I can see online if they're typed in. Here's how this happened. I was always a lover of baseball statistics, and all of you know, whether you like baseball or not, there is no sport that has more stats than baseball, okay? Then I started thinking about all those stats in baseball. The on-base percentage, the slugging percentage, all those kind of things. I said to myself, could we get a number of stats, some real sabermetric is what they call them in baseball because it comes from the Society of American Baseball Research, sabermetric. We could get those sabermetric stats and apply them to high school basketball. Already some of this stuff is being done in the pros and done in college. Guys like Brad Stevens say he relies as much on stats as he does on film. But I thought, let's see if we could find a way of really breaking through and getting some real knowledge about high school basketball with some real state-of-the-art, breakthrough stats. So away we went. I then put together the concept that we have on Thestatvantage, which we're able to apply all sorts of stats and then correlate them with the winning percentage of the team. So we have 250 teams in a sample, okay? We did this twice, 2 years apart. That's 500 teams, okay? And by the way, almost all of our numbers were about the same in each of those batches 2 years apart. So we're very comfortable and very certain that we're onto the right stuff here, okay? So what we did is we balanced out our database so that we had just as many winners as losers. In the end, we had out of 250 teams the same number of wins as losses. And we had some very good teams, some very average teams, and some terrible teams, okay? Did that 2 years apart, 2 groups, 500 teams, probably about 20,000 basketball games in there. We correlated all these stats with winning. In other words, we simply related them statistically with winning, discovering how these stats relate to whether a team wins or loses. That's how we did it. And that's where we got a very clear picture over and over again of what you need to emphasize if you want to win more than other things. For example, we talked about this in some of the other live broadcasts, YouTube presentations rather, that most teams think rebounds are very important, and they are. It's important to get rebounds, but we discover that it doesn't correlate very much with winning. And we believe the reason for that is that rebounding is quite, if you will, random in high school basketball. The ball bounces off the backboard, hits the iron, hops here, here's there, and oftentimes it becomes much more like a loose ball batted around. Now, again, not always the case, but we find in general there's not a high correlation between rebounding and winning. Other things are much more important, okay? Now I take these stats, and I began using these stats in almost every framework, even in my own coaching. So I could determine how effective we were in all the various departments of basketball. And we start then relating, and I'm giving this now to you coaches of Thestatvantage.com, where we're going to give you an opportunity to see what relates to winning and even taking the next step now for you out there. If you're a coach, we are offering what we call a service, a basketball service. Now, we will take your stats. So what we're going to do, first of all, encourage you to get our book. It's Thestatvantage.com. Costs only $19.95, hardly enough for a meal for 2 people at an average restaurant anymore. You can get that book, download it, and you will know all sorts of things about basketball and what wins, what doesn't win, than you know right now. And you're going to be surprised. You're going to think some things aren't terribly important. And you're going to discover they are important, extremely important. Keep questions coming, folks, okay? Now, once you get that, if you're interested, have us work directly with you at a very affordable price. I want to emphasize affordability. I coached at a small Midwestern Christian school. We played teams 7 times, high school 7 times larger than ours. We had hardly any budget. We didn't have a school bus to transport the kids. So I understand how tight money can be. So we are making this so incredibly affordable to you that you won't believe it. And what we're willing to do for you is take your stats, and we'll be able to analyze them at various points in the season and guide you in the direction you want to go in getting the most out of your team. Now, I don't want to go into a great detail on that right now. That's something you see on our website. But look at our service as well as the book. Now, you fans out there, just get the book. You're going to love the book. You're going to look at that book and you're going to know more about basketball than a lot of coaches do, because you're going to know what wins and what doesn't win. You're going to know how to take numbers and crunch them. Now, let me say something about numbers. I do it in every one of my broadcasts here, but I got to say it again. Don't be scared off by math and stats. I know there are coaches out there that aren't real big on stats, partly because they don't feel comfortable working with statistics. Okay? Now, if you don't feel comfortable with statistics, don't worry about that. If you can read the speed limit sign on a highway and know what that number is, you'll be able to work with us, because we've gotten it so that it is absolutely simple and clear whatever those numbers mean and how they work. And you will have no problem. If you got through coaching, you could do this, okay? And you will see your basketball team and basketball in general in a whole new world, in a whole new perspective. You fans, the same thing. You will see the game differently. So Thestatvantage has that. So what I did is, in coaching, I began applying these stats. I even used these stats at times to scout teams. I would go online and find the stats of an opponent. And because I knew what won, what didn't win, and I knew how teams play and so forth, without seeing a frame of film, no tape at all, I was able to line my team up and play and be ready for a team just by using stats to scout them. It's a very effective method, and there are ways we talk about being able to do that, okay? One of the key issues in StatVantage is that we teach people how to use simple stats in all sorts of different ways. This thing of scouting, very important. I'll give you an example. Many of you folks, players, many coaches rather, you get yourself into a holiday tournament, okay? And those are fun, a lot of fun holiday tournaments, okay? But the problem is you're gonna play some team from another state or from way across the state, okay? So you don't see that team. You can't get film on that team. You can't do anything. If you get any stats and you know how to work them the way we'll show you how to work them, what'll happen is you'll be able to scout that team. They won't be able to scout you because they won't know what you know in terms of how to handle it, okay? 3-point shot. One question get is, but what about individual players? That's the key thing at the 3-point shot. Be sure, if you're a coach, to test your guys on a 3-point shot in practice. Start keeping some numbers. Have your team manager or whatever just scratch out those 3-point numbers. And do that plus with your own eyes and take the eye test and see who hits them and who doesn't. But I'm gonna tell you, you wanna take those numbers. I had a kid one time who was 3rd team All-State. He was probably good enough to play at some low-level Division I schools, okay? And he's one of the kids came out of that very small Christian school. He had a jump shot to die for. If you watch that kid, you'd want to do a training film with his jump shot. It was his form was just flawless. His father had been a college basketball player, and he was a guard, and he averaged 20 a game, and he had a good shooting percentage. But guess what? His three-point percentage was not good at all. It lounged around 15 to 20%. He drove to the basket. He made a lot of intermediate shots. Overall, had a fine shooting percentage, but not from the three-point line. But my point is, here's a guy who would have passed the eye test. You would have looked at him and you said, hey, this kid can shoot. And you wouldn't really note how often he didn't hit the three. I had another kid on the same team, not really very athletic, left-hander. He kind of slung it up from outside, shot a much higher three-point percentage. Be sure you know what players hit them and what players don't hit them, okay? Because if you do, then you can use it sparingly and spottingly. You could set up certain offensive sequences where you get that ball at the hand of the right guy and shoot that three. That's what you want. You always want to have it in the hands of the right guy if you're shooting it, okay? You need to use it now and then for you coaches. Nothing's all the time. You want to show them the three every once in a while, because if you don't, the teams are going to come up and close out your players real fast at the two-point spot. So you want to give them a few threes. But if you're not shooting them well, don't take very many of them, okay? Get another common question that comes in. Let me sip my water here. And it kind of is along the line of how sure are you that this is fact? I mean, you got a database, but there's a lot of databases that don't prove to be correct rather. Well, here's one for you. What we did is we went and found 250 teams. I mentioned that before, all over the country. So we spread it out. We don't just have East Coast basketball. Almost every state is represented in the 250, okay? So we don't have just East Coast or South or Midwest or West Coast. We have a nationwide sample, and we did it 2 times, okay? And again, we balance it out for wins and losses. And then we now have thousands of games represented in there. And then we did that twice, 2 years apart. And we keep finding the same numbers. The shooting percentage has hardly moved over 2 years span among thousands and thousands of games. So folks, we know that we're very comfortable, we have the facts, okay? But the key thing is, if you don't know the facts of high school basketball, what really wins and what doesn't win, you're probably going to spend those valuable coaching moments that you have in practice and use them incorrectly. You want to be sure you're using every moment you have in checking questions here. Here we go. What we're trying to do is be sure that you're spending your practice time on the things that really count. There are a lot of coaches, obviously, or almost all coaches do this. They take that position of basically doing, hang on, a little there. Okay, emphasize what they were taught. Let me give you an interesting thing. For in published books, walks are critically important. You see, this is the thing that happens. People